We're good? Okay. All right, shalom everybody. And it's nice to be back. So what we're going to do today, I guess get into the Chanukah mode a little bit. And the opening sugya, I'm sure that some of you have seen already. I asked Daniela if it's okay to go there. She said she doesn't know what's happened over the last number of years, but it's safe. But we're going to do it as a sugya. And we'll try to do it as a, as a lamdusha. So you try to explain, not necessarily jump straight to the halacha, but try to understand machlokas, Rambam, and Tosfos. Here's the just the public service announcement. When I was preparing the daf, so what do? You look at the Gemara, you do Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, and then from there you're going to jump over to the Rishonim. I got to the Rambam, and from there you're going to go to Achron. In this case, it's the Beis HaLevi. So that's the order of my page that I put the numbering, and that's the order of the page of the Mar Makomos. When I was thinking about how to present it, we don't have that much time to sit around and clear svaras. I just have to, go over and present it. So my order, the order that I'm going to be using is not necessarily exactly like that's what's on the page. I will obviously shout out the number. I apologize, but I just want you to know that we'll jump around a little bit because I'm going to do a different order than what's on the page itself. And with that, let's jump right into it. So the Gemara in Shabbos, number 1 on your page, the Gemara in Shabbos discusses how many candles should we be lighting on Chanukah. So that's Aleph, Tana Rabbanan, Mitzvahs Chanukah near Ishu Beso. I think a rather well-known Gemara that Mitzvahs Chanukah, the basic mitzvah on Chanukah would be that we should have to put some light near Ishu Beso, that there's one candle for every person in their household. So you put one candle outside, one candle outside to represent, to remind us of the miracle. Then Hamahadrin, so those who, Rashi actually, the word Hadar in the Gemara usually means to run after. So Rashi actually writes that Mahadrin, those who chase after accomplishing the mitzvot, near the kol echad ve'echad. So that you should put down a candle, you're adding light. Put down a candle for each member of your household. So if you have 10 people living in the house, so every night you're going to put 10 candles outside. Okay, I haven't seen anybody practice that. But a mahadrin, min a mahadrin, those who are really searching down those mitzvos. So here we have a machlokas. Beit Shammai omrim yom rishon madlik shmona. So Beit Shammai says you're going to start out with 8. Mikan ve'elach pochet v'holech. And then afterwards you start heading downwards. So Beis Hillel omrim yom rishon madlik achas. On the first night you can start 1. This is what we do, obviously. We pass like Beit Hillel. That you can put 1 candle outside. Mikan ve'elach mosif v'holech. And from here and onwards you keep adding every single night. 1 night, and then the second night you have 2. And this is what we're all familiar with. So the opening lines of the Gemara is just to point us in the direction of that this Mahadrin min Mahadrin. We go 1 to 8. Beit Shammai will say 8 to 1.
But they don't say how many people do that.
So the
Gemara doesn't say, is it just the one person or everybody? They don't say.
Correct. But, okay, good. And we'll see afterwards that that's going to be part of our discussion. Rambam and Tosfos Nachon. What's interesting though, okay, we'll wait till we get to Tosfos. Amar Ula, the Gemara continues, so Pligi Batrei Amorai B'Ma'arava, that there was 2 Amoraim who were explaining, Ma'arava and Eretz Yisrael, what the Machlokes Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is based upon. Rabbi Yossi Bar Abin and Rabbi Yossi Bar Zvida. So 2 Amoraim had the same first name, maybe that led to the confusion. So we're not sure who said what, but we say Chad, one of them said, Amar Tamad Beit Shammai. The reason for Beit Shammai is Keneged Yomim Nechnasim. That's just a matter of, we look at the days, and we want to talk about the days, and as you, like you have on the very beginning, 8 days to start off the holiday, and it's going to go downwards. The Tamad Beis Hillel Keneged Yomim Hayotzim. Beis Hillel is going to talk about how many days have passed of the holiday. So we start out with the first day, and then already the second day. 2 days have gone by. Okay, Devarim, you're doing. Chadamar, and the other person, the Cha'or, the way we read the Gemara right now is that somebody else says, I have another reason, and it goes hand in hand. No machlokes here. Chadamar Tamad Beit Shammai. The reason for Beit Shammai is that when we're going to compare bundles of mitzvot, and we start off with a bunch, and we have to, and this bundle of mitzvot will continue for a number of days. Keneged Parei HaChag. We're going to look back to Sukkot, and on Sukkot we have 70 korbanot that are going to be offered. We say it's keneged the shivim amim, the 70 nations of the world. But we start out, I think, with 14 or 13, and then we start going downwards. It's the same thing over here. We got a bundle, and we're going to do for a number of days. We're going to start out with 8, and then we're going to go head downwards. That's Beit Shammai. He's comparing it to Sukkot. Obviously, on machshava, we could see what the comparison is about. But Tama the Beit Hillel, that we have a general rule, the malin b'kodesh ve'in moridin. We always like to add on. We're into adding on to things. So we're going to start out with 1 and then add on for the next night 2. And that seems to be another explanation of their machlokas. This thing is the point, everything is nice and fine and dandy. Okay. And then Gimel, we even have a story. You're going to say, really? Is that really part of what Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is saying? We have a story that backs up this second explanation. Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei Zkenim hayu b'tzidan. He met 2 older people, that were in Sidon, in Lebanon. Amar Asa, Echad Asa k'Beit Shammai, one did like Beit Shammai, Echad Asa k'divrei Beit Hillel. Zenotein tam l'devarav, k'neged parei hachag. V'zenotein tam l'devarav, d'malin b'kodesh ve'en moridin. It's a repeat of that second opinion. And it seems to come as a backup to the fact that that really is a reason that's given for the machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. A question that we're going to have on this Gemara that we'll see a little bit later on is usually when you have 2 opinions, they're not just going to come and say, usually when the Gemara brings down 2 opinions to explain something, they ask immediately, what's the difference? My nafkamina. Or what's going to be the difference between the 2 opinions? And over here we don't do so. We just give reasons for the machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, and we sort of just move along on our way. And especially because in number bet, Omar Ula Pligiba, there's a machlokes, Pligiba, they're arguing. It's not that they're complementary, that there's an argument going on over here. So if there is really an argument, it's not just an argument on machshava, on Jewish thought. There's an argument, there's got to be a halachic practical difference. And the Gemara doesn't discuss that, and we would want to be searching for that. And that's going to be like a question we're going to leave on our back burner and pull out from time to time. So this is how we start. We finish up the Gemara at this point, and the question will be exactly, so how many candles does one really light? And in this case, when we are working our way through quickly the sugya, we're going to jump over to the Rambam in number 4 on your page. Because the Rambam is like a running commentary here on the Gemara. He's going to take the Gemara and just like, spread it out and add to it. And this is what the Rambam writes in number 4 on your page. Kama neirot hu madlik b'Chanukah. How many candles should you light on Chanukah? Mitzvata, the basic mitzvah, sheyakol bayit v'bayit madlik neir echad. Bein shayu anshe bayit merubin, bein shalo hayabo ela adam echad. That the basic mitzvah is that every single household should have 1 candle, whether or not you have many people in the house, or even just 1 person in the house. You're going to light that 1 candle to put it outside the house as pirsume nisa, to publicize the nace that occurred in the Beit HaMikdash. V'mahader et mitzvah, one who's looking after, chasing down the mitzvah, madlik neirot kaminyan anshe habayit ner l'kol echad ve'echad. You got to count up the amount of people in the house, and each one gets the candle. Bein anashim, bein nashim. So if you have 10 people in your household, so you will light how much on like the very first night of Hanukkah? How much are you lighting? 10. Great. And here's the Rambam's understanding of our Gemara. V'mahader yoter al zeh, even more searching down the mitzvot. Osa mitzvah min amuvchar. He's really doing the mitzvah in the prime fashion. Malik ner l'kol echad b'layla harishon. So you're going to start out on the first night. You have 10 people in your house. Start out on the first night. Umosif aholik b'chol layla v'layla ner echad. And then you're going to add on every single night 1 more candle for each person. Ketzad, for example, Harei shayu anshe abayit asara. I have 10 people living at home. B'layla rishon madlik asara neirot. The first night I'll light 10, because that's the mitzvah hamahadrin. Ubelel sheni esrim, but the second night I'm going to also include the additional day, so I'm going to now light 20. Ubelel shlishi shloshim, third night 30. Achenimtzam madlik belel shmini shmonim neirot. So you finally come to the 8th night of Hanukkah with 10 people in your house, and you'll be lighting 80 candles. That's quite a fire out there. Okay?
Fire department on standby.
Yeah, on standby, they'll probably douse your house down. They won't give you the chance. So that's the little, on the bottom, there's a little cute paragraph there. I had a lot of fun finally figuring out how to do those arrows. Very proud of myself about the arrows. But if you notice, the Rambam does have an advantage. He fits very nicely into the reading of the Gemara, right? If I say mitzvah and then I have a mahadir, mahadrin min a mahadrin sounds like I'm building back on the second step. So it's going very nicely. One candle, and then a candle for everybody in the house, and then a candle for everybody in the house times the amount of days. Fits very nicely into the reading of the Gemara. There's only one little bit of a problem over here, and that is when you have 80 candles in front of your house, or even like on the second night, I got 20 candles. So like I'm looking at it, that's right, it's a jump, the fire department's right over there. And you take a look at that, and why is that a mahadrin and mahadrin? Already on the second night I had tons of candles, the next and the third, and then on the first night already I had tons of candles, 10 people in my house. The second night I have more tons of candles. It's just every night, it's a bundle of candles. What am I doing in addition when I do that mahadrin min a mahadrin? It's just one big fire. So that's a good question on the Rambam. So what's an advantage though the Rambam does get? We have to think about what did the Rambam have in mind? When he does mahadrin min a mahadrin, just keep it. A candle, right, exactly. We're in the candle, we add light. That's a Jewish theme. Let's just go out there and give as much light as possible. So each night you're adding candles, adding light. So yeah, maybe the Pesumini says outside people.
We know what day it is, too. So we're advertising.
But the problem is when I'm looking at it, right?
So we have to do it so people can see how many. You have to keep things separate enough so that we know
So
the twos.
you are right. We're going to get to that. But according to the Rambam, he's not saying that. So your point is a good question on the Rambam, right? You're saying I have no idea what day it is, and therefore what am I gaining? So yeah, the adding of candles, just the adding of the lights. Maybe it's more important for you to that aspect of designate or relating to the day. You're relating to it. But outside, people walking on the street just see that there's more candles and more candles, which is probably it's part of Pirsume Nisa. But that's the big question on the Rambam. And the one who asks that big question on the Rambam is going to be number 2 on your page, is Tosfos. All right? Now, Tosfos, Tosfos is asking on the Rambam over here. And Tosfos is number 2 on your page, okay? V'amahadrin min amahadrin, says Tosfos, Nir Livri, Rabbeinu Yitzchak, the Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel lo kaimi ella anir ishu beito. And that's the little arrow. That Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, that this idea of mahadrin, min mahadrin, lo kaimi ella anir ishu beito, that it's going to be that their discussion is only going to be as far as the singular candle that you had. That the mahadrin min mahadrin is coming to modify the base mitzvah. If my base mitzvah was to have just one candle for the entire household, so then the mahadrin, mina mahadrin, is going to be coming to say I add to a one base candle times the amount of days. Shekain yesh yotir hidur, because I'm going to gain something over here. I have a greater amount of hidur, of a glorification of the mitzvah. Why? Because not only am I adding light from night to night, the ika hekera, because I'm also going to have a heker. It's going to be visible, recognizable. What day of Chanukah we're talking about? When you start adding from one day to the next, or mechaser, or you're taking off, but from one day to the next. But there's always going to be a recognition of what day of Chanukah it is, plus the fact that I'm adding on lights. And the reason Tosfos says this is, if I would go ahead and give everybody in the house their candle, I have 10 people in the house, I have 10 candles, and then I'm going to mahadrin min mahadrin, start next night to 20, next night to 30, like the Rambam suggests, afilu yosif mikan ve'elach leka hekera. There's not going to be a knowledge, it's not recognizable what day of Chanukah it is, sheyizbru shekach yesh b'nei adam b'bayit, because they're just going to think, okay, you have 80 people, you must be on the 8th night of Chanukah, you have 80 candles. People are looking at that, what are they going to assume? They're going to say you had a party that night, right? You invited the entire family.
Night of Hanukkah.
Huh?
The 80th night.
It's the possibly, right? Or they might assume it's the fourth night of Hanukkah and you have 20 people in your household. There's no way of knowing. No way of knowing. So that's Tosas' taina. That's his question on the Rambam.
No, he's now changed it. It's no longer Mahadrim Mina Mahadrim. It's just another form of Mahadrim.
Okay. So what you could say on Tosos is that the Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin doesn't fit as nicely because it's coming not to modify the previous step of Mahadrin, but it's going back and modifying near Ishu Beisa. That is true. And so you always have advantages and disadvantages. And right, that is the obvious disadvantage over here to Tosfos. Tosfos will just say, I guess that he'll say, look, I learned one candle for a family, and then I learned that I want to add light from night to, like I want to have a lot of light, more than just that one candle, that's Mahadrin. And now I'm learning I want to somehow have it recognizable what day it is. And he'll have to do a quick dance on that. But you're right. It's not going to knock Tosas out of the box, but that is true, what you're being medayik. Yes. But Tosas got a good question. And Tosas is also saying, look, I'm looking at the Gemara, and the Gemara does talk about 1 to 8 and 8 to 1. Like, what happened exactly? How did the Rambam not relate to the Gemara over here? The Gemara gives us two reasons for the machloket Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. How come the Rambam came up with his conclusion that I don't really have to worry about having it recognizable what night of the week of Hanukkah it is, what night of Hanukkah it is? Good question on the Rambam. So this is...
I have to ask, I'm a little confused. So according to Tosfos, what's the Mahadrin, it's basically the basic mitzvah is one candle for the family.
Yes.
Mahadrin is, if there's 10 people, 10 candles.
Yes.
Just each night.
Each night keep going 10, 10, 10.
Okay, and then the Mahadrin is what according to Tosfos?
So it's going to be what we do. It's going to be the basic mitzvah times the day of Hanukkah.
So one person only.
So what's the difference then?
One person
So
only.
then what's going to happen, according to, on the chart, number 3 on your page, according to Tosfot, Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin, it's the 8th night of Hanukkah with 10 people in my house, I'm going to be lighting 8 candles.
It's the basic mitzvah.
It's the basic mitzvah plus times the amount, the night of Hanukkah. I'll have 8 candles.
8 candles, and 10 people have 8 candles.
No. So according to the, let's take a look at chart number 3. Okay. So this chart is a case in which I have, it's the 8th night of Hanukkah, number 3 on your page. 8th night of Hanukkah, 10 people in the house. Near Ishu Beso says I have to put a light. I have to put a candle outside my house, so I only have to light one. The Mahadrin comes by and says, no, what you really should do is have near L'kol Echad ve'echad, that I should relate a candle for every single person in my house. I have 10 people in my house, let's light 10 candles. Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin Tosa says, look, I'm going to lose track. Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin says, do not lose track of what night of Hanukkah it is. So let's put it this way. Don't lose track, but also keep on track. We want to publicize what night of Hanukkah is, how long the Neser went, and therefore, on the 8th night of Hanukkah, I'm not going to relate to the 10 people in my house. I'm going to take that basic mitzvah of one candle, but times it times, it's 8th night of Hanukkah times 8. I'll be lighting sachakol, totally 8 candles. That's going to be Tos's approach. That's what we do in our basic mitzvah. We'll get into the minhagim, right? But that's what we do.
Mishnah near Ishu Beito on the 8th day, the basic would be one candle.
Correct.
That's the point.
Correct. And the Mahadrin I'm gonna add. Okay, should I say this now because I don't want to. You have a case. The Mishnah Berurah does bring down a fun case. All right, let's see if we can get this right. That we're either playing with the accomplishing Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin, or what do? Like person starts out. Let's say forget about the shamash. He has electric lights for the shamash. If you have 8 candles, you're stuck on an army patrol, and you only have 8 candles for the entire Hanukkah. Okay? So how much are you going to light every night? 1. Okay, let's say you have 9 candles. So I'm going to light 1 the first night and 2 the second night. All right? And that leaves me with 6 left over for going back to the basic. Let's say I have 10 candles. I light 1 the first night, 2 on the second night. What do I do the next night? On the third night of Chanukah. I can't light 3 because I don't have enough. So do I light 2 or do I light 1? If I light 2, right, so I'll go back to 1. That's how we'll see. The Beis Levi has a different suggestion on something, but that's how Mr. Brewer writes.
Why can't you cut the curtain?
Wise guy, right? Yeah. Remember Three Stooges? Wise guy. There is. We'll see actually at the end.
Nathan Sharansky did that.
Oh, you're fair.
Yeah,
I'll use that.
He wanted to light candles in prison, and if he couldn't.
Shoe polish on the string or something? No?
No, he
Cut the candles. We're going to see afterwards the Beis Levi. At the end, we'll see there's a nice vort of the Beis Levi. Make the wicks thinner. Less oil. You'll last 8 days. We'll see that. We'll come back to that. Okay, so that's going to be, now the Rambam though will come up with 80 candles on last night. We said the Rambam, Tosfos is asking, Rambam, what do you do? How do you read this Gemara? The Gemara is relating to the fact that there is a concept of having it recognizable the night of Chanukah. So there's a Bir Hagra that we'll see in a second inside. There's a Bir Hagra that tells us that this is how the Rambam read it. You know, we're going to go back over here. Let's stay on our page. Let's look at, again, the Gemara number 1 on your page, and let's read from Bet. This is how the Rambam learned our Gemara. Amar Ula, pligi batre amarai. There's a machlokes going on. What's the machlokes? What's the practical halachic difference? So two Rabbi Yossis. Chad Amar Tama de Beit Shammai. So one came up and said that it's Keneged Yomim HaNechnasim v'Tama de Beit Hillel Keneged Yomim HaYotzim. That the first opinion holds that Beit Hillel is telling you that I want to know. I'm going to go from 1 to 8 because I'm relating to the day. The day has to be recognizable. V'Chad Amar, the next opinion says, no, according to Beit Hillel, it has to do with Malin B'Kodesh v'Ein Moridin. There's nothing to do with the days. I don't care about the days or marking out the days. No, I want to just add on Malin B'Kodesh Ein Moridin. I have to go up in holiness. I'm going to go up in the Mount of Candles Ein Moridin, and and that's an argument. The first opinion is saying you gotta have a heker. You have to state clearly what day it is. And the second opinion is saying I don't care about days. That's why it says pligi. Ula says this is a machlok. It says pligi, but how did the Gemara paskin? It's right there in front of our face. It's the Rambam. If you look at Gimel, why are they bringing in this story? It doesn't add anything, but it does. Amar Rabbi Baruch Felberman, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei Zkenim hayu b'tzidan. There were 2 elders in Sidon. Echad asar Beit Shammai, that somebody like Beit Hillel, v'zenotein tam l'devrav k'neged parei achag, v'zenotein tam l'devrav d'malim b'kodesh ve'en moridin. What's missing from the story? Missing from the story is that they're just relating to Malin B'Kodesh. In the story, they don't relate to the fact that you have to state clearly what day it is. So the Rambam just read the Gemara through, and at the end of the Gemara, they bring in the story. For what reason? To prove that we paskin like the second opinion that says Malin B'Kodesh is the prime reason for adding on candles. And it negates the first opinion that said that we're adding on candles because of the days. You know what's, according to the Rambam read this Gemara, I don't have any concerns about marking off the days. That's how the Rambam read the Gemara over here. And that's a biragraph. If you turn the page, you'll see, and we're not going to read everything because of time, but it's on the page so you can bring it home with you. If you take a look at number 9 on your page, what does he say? Because of Agra, the Vilna Gaon, l'taretz das Rambam, the Sfirale, he's going to explain the Rambam, the Sfirale de lahachman de Amar de Mefarish Tama, that opinion that explains Beit Shammai connected the korbanot on Sukkos, ul Beit Hillel mishum Malin B'Kodesh, lo ichpat leklal. It's a second opinion. He doesn't care at all. Shehayiyu haneirot k'mispar hayamim. He doesn't care at all about this idea of like marking off or making it recognizable what day of the Chag it is. Harikaimalan kahach manda amar kidamasik b'gemara. Because we and behold, we actually do paskin like this second opinion. That why? Because the Gemara concludes mehani shneis kenim shebetzidan, from these two elderly people who were there in Sidon, and they tell that story because they want to give us a conclusion to this machlokes. Mishum haki pasak Rambam, and that's why the Rambam paskined like this, that you don't have to worry about the amount of days showing what day it is, and that's why the Rambam says that on the 8th night of Chanukah with 10 people in Yas, you're lighting 80. Because I just want to constantly be mosif. I'm always adding. I'm always going and adding, just adding more and more light. And that, therefore, in this, the Beis Halevi points out that here, nach the al kolpan in the devar of nispar the nafka mina tuva bahach plukta. So now I understand why Ula came up and said pliba trei amorai. Ula introduces this when he brought down the two opinions. He says it's a machlokas. Yeah, there's a machlokas because you're going to have very clear machlokes, practical halachic difference. It's going to come out basically Tosfos' opinion versus the Rambam is going to be like resting on these two opinions that Ula was bringing down. Yeah.
You have another parallel, and that's counting over. You count up or count down.
Yeah. So how do you say this in Yiddish? Frekte kasha, ve'empte kasha. Anybody grow up with that? No, I didn't either. I know it existed. I know it's Yiddish. It's Yiddish. Right? You ask the question, you can answer it though.
Parallels the difference between.
Because there I but there I have something. But there we don't see the other side.
Mostly thin. It's not. You're reading.
Yeah, but they were counting up, right? And we don't have Beit Shammai chirping in. So why not? Then you have to look for that reason. So either the Sefer HaChinuch says something like, if you would start at 50, read all plots from too much anticipation. It's too long to count. It's Sefer HaChinuch. It's right in there, believe it or not. The other, the Bali Musar, just like to say that I'm building up towards something. Mm-hmm. So I say, 1 day I was good. 2 days I was good. And then you finally, 3 days, 20 days, 50 days I was so good, now I could get Torah. But they answer, so they're relating to your question. It's why is it that why don't you start from 50 and count down? Yeah, it's fun. Okay. What's our next step along the way for doing the sugya over here? So the Rambam has read the Gemara very clearly. Right? What does Tosfos do? So this is how we're going to read. First we're going to read it. I guess we're going to go back to the Gemara and we're going to read it according to Tosfos. And then we'll see it inside. Then we'll see it inside the Beis Halevi. Let's go back to the Gemara again. We haven't gone very far. We're still on number 1 on the page. So what does he say?
Counting up or down?
Yeah. So take a look. Number 1. Let's start from the very beginning. Number 1 on your page. Tana Rabbanan mitzvahs Chanukah near Yishubeso. Okay, that's the base mitzvah. Mahadrin. According to everybody, near the kol echad ve'echad, amount of people you have in your house. Hamahadrin min hamahadrin, Beit Shammai omrim, yom rishon malik shmona mikam ve'elech pochet v'holech. In which my heading in this Gemara is very clearly that I'm going to be relating to the days. Beit Shammai yom rishon malik achas mikam ve'elech mosif v'holech. It seems that that's like the byline of this Gemara, and it's that is like the underlying premise of this Gemara. And that's Tosfos' starting assumption. Now, so Omar Ula, I have a machlokes. Pligi ba'trei amaroi. Rabbi Yossi bar Abin, Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. Chad amar tamad the Beit Shammai keneged yomim nechnasim, v'tamad Beis Hillel keneged yomim mayotzim. They were arguing. Beit Shammai says you go 8 to 1. Beit Hillel says you go 1 to 8. And we want to recognize the day. And they argue with each other. Never how do you say twain shall meet? Twain shall meet. Where's our...
East is east,
how do you say it?
West. East is east and west, and never the twain will meet.
And never the twain shall meet?
Never the twain shall meet.
Okay, that was in honor of the tea over here. Not coffee. Yeah.
Where did the essential halachas, these lighting candles at Hanukkah, first come from?
Okay, so the Gemara in Shabbos also later on.
Who said it? Who set that up?
So that in the Gemara in Shabbos, also on this page, Chaf Aleph Amud Bet, at the bottom over there, it's Tanur Rabban and the Chachamim set it up.
And what did they say at that point?
So that's always a question. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is arguing. So what? All those generations,
So they didn't say anything about how many, whatever. They just said what? What did they say?
They just said that we do a mitzvah of lighting candles.
Just lighting candles.
Yes, and then in the same Gemara, so they start asking, but how do you? So the question is, when did this argument come in? And that I don't have.
So it would sound like you could write, you could do any number of candles at any time.
Well, no.
And that's candles.
No. Well, that's why the Gemara in its entirety is the bundle of the discussions in the Gemara is how we're going to come away with practically what we should be doing. So the Gemara, same Gemara on the same daf that discusses the takana at the very beginning, which is also an interesting discussion. When exactly did they enact it? Because the lashon of the Gemara is at another time later. But that same Gemara is going to say, okay, what did they have in mind? And then we get into a machlokas Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Now, if you're studying halacha, history of halacha, then you'd have to ask yourself, at what point did they have a difference of opinion? They're living all together at that point they're in Eretz Yisrael.
At what point did they enact it?
So at some point after.
So who enacted it, and what did they say at that point?
So that's what's mentioned in the Gemara. The Gemara says that who enacted it would be the Sanhedrin at that point.
And what did they say?
That's what we're discussing in our Gemara. What did they say?
They didn't say anything?
They must have said something.
So what did they say?
They said these three things, but we don't know what order it's going to be, and that's why Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are arguing on it. That's how you look at the Gemara. The Gemara has in some places say this is the basic idea, and then afterwards we have a machlokas. The machlokas can ask when that machlokas came in. Did they say something very clearly at the very beginning and we don't have it, or like there was different throughout the country? People did different things. That I don't know. But like we walk away from the Gemara and we have to figure out what did they enact. I don't know. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel seem to have known, but they had different opinions.
They did that at the same time. At the same time, and one of them came first, and then the other one, Hillel was first, and then Shabbai came 20 years later.
No, they were zug. They came together. So I don't know. I don't know.
I thought they were, but
that's very interesting. That gets into more of what would be the history, halachic history of the time. I don't know.
But at one point there was one neir for a household. Neir l'chol echad. Neir ishu v'etov.
It would seem like the original takana was, the original enactment was these three different levels. That's what it would seem like. And then, I guess it depends on how many candles you have. Today, it's easy for us. We just grab candles, we grab oil. There were times oil's expensive. So there was different options for what a person should do. Okay, yeah, if you couldn't afford the oil. So that's it. Okay.
It seems like the takana was Ner Echad Ushu Beitzel. And over the years, these minhagim developed.
I don't know if that. I can't prove that from the Gemara. Maybe not. I'd rather go with some assuming that these were different options based upon how much oil you had in your house, how wealthy you were. You just easily say that. I don't know. What I do know is as we stand here, 2,100 and about 80 years later, after the Nace, I'm trying to figure out what to do, and therefore the collective body of discussions of the Rabbanim in the yeshiva is marked in the Gemara, and that's my basis. Okay, great. So, we're learning according to Tosas. How do you learn this Gemara? So Tosas just looks at it and he says, I have a machlokes. My first opinion is Beit Shammai says we go according to the days. Beit Hillel says we go according to adding on 1 through 8. And Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are arguing with each other, and you have to choose between the two. The next opinion, Chad Amar, Tama de Beit Shammai, Keneged Parei HaChag. The Tama de Beit Hillel, the Malam Kosher Im Moridin. Says the Beis Halevi. That this opinion over here, this opinion is saying that both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, they agree with each other I want to have some kind of a recognition of what day it is. And Beit Hillel theoretically would agree with Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai would theoretically agree with Beit Hillel. Right? They're going to be different groups, which is a problem, but they could agree with each other. I want to mark off what day it is. I have two options, either 1 to 8 or 8 to 1. What prompted Beit Hillel to go 1 to 8? Because in the background, he knows he's looking at Ma'alin B'Kodesh that we always add on. And what prompted Beit Shammai to say go 8 to 1 is because in the back of his mind, he's saying, on Sukkot, we start out with a bundle and we go downwards. But the second reason over here given, those are prompts for why Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai said what they said, going up and down, or down and then up. But it's not that Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai argue with each other. And that's what the machlokes is. When it says, Ula says, Pligi Batrei Amorai, we have a machlokes, was that Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai were arguing with each other completely, not accepting the other opinion, or did they accept the other opinion, but say, I have a preference. The preference was based upon their additional svara of either Ma'alin B'Kodesh or Parei HaChag. What's going to be the difference? All right, what's the nafkamina between these two tzadim? So this is how Tosfos is learning. Tosfos says that the idea of marking off what day of Chanukah it is, that's throughout our Gemara. We never got rid of it. Okay? And that's why Tosfos says, Hekera, you have to have. What is interesting, though, would be, says the Beit HaLevi, and this is number 11, the top of your second page, would be the following case. What happens? Look at the chart over here. Yom Chamishi V'Lamala. Let's say it's the 5th day of Chanukah, and you only have 4 candles. Okay? 5th day of Chanukah. You only have 4 candles. So what are you going to do? According to our first opinion that Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are arguing with each other, they're not going to agree with each other, so Beit Hillel is saying, okay, it's the 5th day of Chanukah, I should be lighting 5 candles, but I only have 4. What am I going to do? I'm going to go, light 1. Go back to the base.
Don't cut 1 in half and you'll have 5.
Yeah, okay.
Light 1 candle every day for the next 4 nights.
Okay, but I'm going to light the 1 candle on that day, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you lit 4 the previous night and you're going to light 1 tonight,
that's the case. Okay, when you get these theoretical cases, that's what happens. We start the night off like that. Okay, now, but according to the second opinion, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are not arguing each other, not punching each other out of the box. They say, I agree with you, and Beit Shammai says, I agree with you. We agree. You got 2 options. Beit Hillel says, I have a preference because of Ma'alin B'Kodesh. But I don't argue with you, Beit Shammai, completely. So if I can't accomplish Ma'alin B'Kodesh, 4th night I light 4. It's the 5th night. I don't have any more candles. I can't go up to 5. I don't have enough candles. So what should I do? Do I go back to 1? Or do I say, in this case, I'm going to agree with you, Beit Shammai, and I'll light 4 candles because according to Beit Shammai, I'm up to 4 candles. And that's where the Beit HaLevi says that would be the why you see there's an argument, a nafkamina halacha. But he says this is how Tosfos would have read this Gemara because the idea of counting the days, marking off the days, is very clear throughout the Gemara. Yeah.
That's b'diavad because you only have 4 candles. But why couldn't they do it from the day? We start off with.
He's a theoretical. Theoreticals, theoreticals. I'm out. True story. I'm out on. They dropped me off in the middle of the night on the border. I used to do on my miluim was on the Jordanian border. It's the middle of the night. They left me over there, and I'm standing there. Okay. Turns out that there was a break in the fence between us and Jordan. Back in those days, it was not a big deal. So they said no. Yeah, that's why I was there. I was guarding the break in the fence. So they said, we'll come by tomorrow morning. I had my canteen, and I don't know. They said, we'll come by tomorrow morning, and we'll pick you up. And of course, they didn't. So I'm over there, and I think I had finished up my water. Yeah. So I wanted to daven. But what do? I don't have any water. So I have to wash hands, right? So that gets into a beautiful machlokas. So what do you do in that case?
Sand.
So, yes, I took sand and I said a bracha. What was the bracha? Asher kirishon mitzasav v'tzivanu al nikiyut yadayim. That's the shita of the Rush. That's a proof that we sort of lean towards the Rush, and there's nafkaminas in a different case. But that's life is like that. You don't plan. Excuse me. Baruch Hashem, that they did well. It's far enough.
Wait till then, day 6, 7, 8, you have no candles left. You're done.
In this case, yeah, I don't know. You got a shipment in the next. In this case.
In this case, you like the 4 that you've got, and that's it.
That's it, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, according to Beis Halevi, what you're really asking is, even according to Beis Halevi, is that what you're supposed to do? That's a question.
Yeah, you can bend it.
You find out
We probably might paskin la halacha that you would do one to make sure that if you knew you weren't going, if you didn't know you're getting more, right? Okay, interesting. It's just interesting because, like I said, this is like how the sugya, learning the sugya. This Gemara and Iyun sugya. Beis Halevi was he's a Soloveitchik, right? The first Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik is the Beis Halevi. His son was Reb Chaim Brisker, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, whose son was Reb Moshe, whose son was the Rav. So it's just interesting. It's fun to listen to how their minds are working. What is interesting, I'm going to just mention very quickly, and you guys take it home, and I'll just another 2 minutes, and then I would just like to finish up with some kind of a nice vort to take with you. If you look at number 6 on your page, it's number 6. It's the back of the first page. This, as they point out, is very interesting. That the Rambam, just take a look at the top of the first page, flip it over, the top is number 6. Minag pashut b'chol oreinu. Here the Rambam, after he gives over this whole thing about 80 candles, and you don't know what day it is, and that's the Rambam, how he paskins. Minag pashut b'chol oreinu, minag that's spread out in our towns, b'sfarad, in Spain, sheyukol anshei habayis madlikim ner echad b'layla rishon. It doesn't make a difference how many people you have in the house. You light one candle on the first night, umosifin v'holchin ner b'chol layla, and then you go ahead and add each night one more candle, ad shenimtza madlik b'leil shmini shmona neirot. So that on the 8th night you're going to light 8 candles. It doesn't make bein sheyu anshei habayit merubim bein sheyu adam echad. It doesn't make a difference. You have 10 people in the house. The Rambam says the minhag is not like me, and he was honest enough to say it. Who's this? What minhag is? Where did you see this minhag before? That you go 1 and then go up to 8, and that's it. Doesn't make a difference how many people you have in the house. That's Tosfos. So this is an example where we see that the Sfardim paskin not like the Rambam, but like Tosfos. If you take a look at number 7, very cutely, number 7, bet, halacha bet, Shulchan Aruch, halacha bet, kama neirot madlik, b'layla rishon madlik echad, mikan ve'elach mosif v'holech, echad b'chol leil, ad sheb'leil acharon yeshmona, v'afilim rabban, b'nei abayit lo yaliku yoter. Again, the Shulchan Aruch says exactly like we expect him to do, like the Rambam. Comes Haggah, the Ramah, Rav Moshe Israelish, the din in the minhag of Ashkenazim, v'yesh omrim to kol echad b'nei abayit yadlik v'chein minhag pashut. The Ramah says that here in Ashkenaz we do differently, and that everybody in the house should be lighting the candles, like the Rambam. Here's an example where the Ashkenazim paskind, not like Tosfos, but like the Rambam. One example in which it's flipped. Ashkenazim went like Rambam, Sfardim went like the Tosfos. However, the Ramah is obviously concerned about what? You have 10 people in your house, and there's 8th night of Chanukah, and you have 8 menorahs over there, and what's it going to look like? So therefore, he adds on the Ramah, v'yizaru litain kol echad ve'echad neirotah b'makom yuchad k'dei she'yeh heker kama neiros madlikim. The Ramah still is concerned about Tosos. He says try to separate out the Chanukiyot so that it can still be apparent which night of Chanukah it is. You're going to have a challenge as far as trying to fit in within 3 tefachim to Eser tefachim, next to the mezuzah. And that's why we say, right? Isn't that why we say it's Lebedik? It should be Freilich Chanukah because it gets a little complicated. Now, yeah.
That's all. And they like that opinion, so they did it. But there's a difference.
The halachic, in the halachic traditions can be looking over our shoulders at what came beforehand. So why is it that when they say minhag, the Rambam himself writes minhag, and also the Ramah. So that's, you look around, put chazi ma'ama devar, you find that in the Gemara, look out and see what's happening, and somehow it came about, the Ashkenaz, they were passing like the Rambam. And again, this goes back to, I don't know the history of how things developed, but the Ramah, when he's writing, he's just saying, look, take a look, that they were doing it. So, yeah. Okay.
Don't talk about 60, 70, 80 like the Rambam talks. They talk about 8 broken up into separate, separate groups.
Right. Okay, I got just 5 minutes. I want to point out, you can take it home and look at it. There's an underlying, on the bottom of the page, on the second page, towards the bottom, and every holiday has its own themes. Okay, every holiday has its themes, and specific to that holiday. But there is an underlining theme that you find in Judaism, and also in every holiday you'll find it, and that is the concept of love between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael. The focus that we each have on each other. God has his focus on us. We have our focus on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, for example, famous, I think, that when Am Yisrael calls, what do we call Passover? Chag Pesach, because we're relating to God passing over our house. And God calls it Chag HaMatzos, because he talks about, he's focused on his beloved, on the Jewish people that walk out into a desert, schlepping along these crackers. And then when we talk, let's say, what's Chag HaSukkot? The nickname for Chag HaSukkot? Sukkos and Bikurim? Or that's Shavuos. What is it, Sukkos? All right, let's do Shavuos. Shavuos we call Chag HaBikurim. God calls it that because we're bringing Bikurim. He's focused on what we're doing. And we call it Zman Matan Toratena because we're focused on what God's doing for us. It's a theme. If you look at it at home, number 3 on this second page, in Gemara and Brachos, the Gemara asks, what's in a Kadosh Baruch Hu's tefillin? And there, the Gemara says, well, in our tefillin, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And in the God's tefillin, the Gemara says, God wears tefillin? They say, yeah, he does. What's in his tefillin? Mi ka'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. Who's like the Jewish people, a singular, a unique nation in the world? And then the Gemara continues on, giving speech to Kadosh Baruch Hu from the Torah, that Shem says, Atem asituni, Atem asituni chativa achat ba'olam. You made me, you Jewish people make me unique in the world as treasure. As you say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So I look at you guys as being very unique in the world. As if I might tefillin, it's Mi Kamcha Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz. So the Ein Ayad, Rav Kook, in number 4 on your page, take a look at it at home. It's beautiful. He talks about tefillin. He says that we go through life and our brains and our emotions, our brains, our head, and our emotions from our heart, they're focused a lot of the time in basically tracking down both emotionally and mentally what I need, what I want, like pretty much like on base needs often. But we train ourselves. We're sitting in this room. Why? Because we have been trained in thinking in terms of what's the greater goal, as far as applying Kadosh Baruch Hu into this world. In other words, we're trying to take our ratzon, our desires, and our seichel, and focus it in on a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So our tefillin represents that idea. It's taking the brains and taking the heart, taking the emotions, and taking it and having it rising from that place, rising to a higher, more niskav, lofty place, a loftier place. As far as focus into Kadosh Baruch Hu and bringing morality in this world, and bringing the Word of God in this world, okay, God does that also. A lot of times, God is behind the scenes, like. This is like reading the newspaper, right? Any of us would wake up on Shabbos morning and say, what's a pretty good standard, like a constant? Well, I guess a constant is that I'm going to have the Assad, regime up there in our northern border. And then you wake up the next day and poof, it's gone. As I said this to my wife, I said, boy, this is so amazing that we're seeing this. We've never seen anything like this. She says, of course we did. So what are you talking about? She says, yeah, you're forgetting when the Soviet Union... Right? Remember that? We thought the Soviet Union was going to be around for 1,000 years. You wake up the next morning, I still have the picture in my brain of the tanks in the square in front of the Kremlin. And I think so between Gorbachev and Yeltsin, they did decide they're not shooting on the Russian populace, and everything just fell apart. The people climbing over the tanks in the square. Overnight, Soviet Union disappears. So Kodesh Baruch Hu is back behind the scenes. He's running the show. Those guys disappeared. I have a great story, but not for now, about the establishment, the Battle of Brooklyn, and how Kodesh Baruch Hu got involved to help Washington escape with his cannons, even though it was over. The revolution was over. Both the cases. So the Maisa, so what happens over here, Kodesh Baruch Hu is running the world. We see it primarily as an advancement in the world towards, we often see it just in physical terms. It's a better world that we live in, advancement in technology all over. But a Kodesh Baruch Hu really has in mind that he's making the world advance. It's hard for us to see it, but really what he has in mind is for that period, that utopiistic period, l'taken olam mitachat l'malchut shakai, that the world will be perfected under the reign of the Almighty, and that who's going to be the vanguard as far as accomplishing that? That's going to be the Jewish people. And therefore, what's in God's thoughts really, and on his tefillin, it's actually tefillin shel rosh, his thoughts, is that the world's moving along so that we should be able to accomplish our goal and present God into this world. And that's why it says in his tefillin, Mikamcha Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz. Rav Kook says it's the same things. Beautiful, look at it in Einayah. I just want to point out to you, somebody, I'm forgetting names, I'm going to have to write down. He says like this, he asks that question, the Beis HaLevi, number 1 on your page, he says, they had only one jar, right? One jar. But they had thick wicks. Because in the Beis HaMikdash, they didn't do things in a pansy. They did it nicely. Big, thick wicks. He said, why don't you just pull apart the wicks, make them 1/8 the size, and you'd have enough oil to last. So he says that they didn't want to do that. Why? Because the whole battle against the Greeks was to get back our Beit HaMikdash and to be able to do things in a mahuder fashion. Not a bidiyevit. We are enough of bidiyevits, hiding in the rooms and lighting. We want to get out there and do it in a mahuder fashion. Because of the fact that we did it in that fashion and showed our love for Kadosh Baruch Hu, so Hashem responded with the nes. And that's why, where did you ever see a mitzvah of mahadrin min a mahadrin? It doesn't exist. We have mahudar in every mitzvah across the board. But the Zekilian Veil, mahadrin the mitzvah. Mahadrin min a mahadrin? Never saw it before. Chanukah we have it because that's so much part of what went on, says the Beis HaLevi. So we're showing our love towards Kadosh Baruch Hu and that's the word my Hashem, the Pnei Yoshua says, what? Why did you need the mitzvah? Why did you need the nes? There's a concept called Tuma Hutra B'tzibur, that if everyone is Tameh, the Beis HaMikdash is Tameh, and it's just the whole place is Tameh, Hutra B'tzibur, then you're matter to run the Beis HaMikdash afilu b'tumah until we could get it back together again. It's a famous question of Pnei Yoshua. So let the Jewish people light that one little jar, and now what are they going to do on the second night? Get some tamadika oil and light until we're able to put it together again at the end of the week. So the base. So whenever they got, but in the meantime they'll use the tamadika oil, right, until you could put it together. Says the Pnei Yoshua, no, because there was always nisim that took place in the mikdash, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show the Jewish people how much he has love for the Jewish people, and therefore he wanted to perform that nes in order to say, we've gotten back to the times, says Shimon Atzai, but we've gotten back to the times where you see nisim in the Beis HaMikdash. And that's why Kadosh Baruch Hu pulled off the nes. He could have let us do it in Tumba Hututzi, but Hashem said, I want to make a statement over here. You take the Beis HaLevi, you take the Pnei Yoshua, they have their question, but the conclusion is, Beis HaLevi, Jewish people are showing their love for Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the conclusion of the Pnei Yoshua is Hashem showing his love for the Jewish people. You put them together, and like usual, we always come out, with hugs and kisses, and that's another one of the themes, an underlining theme that you find throughout Judaism and our tefillin, but that's also an underlying theme you find in all of the Chagim, and Bezat Hashem, we should see that more and more clearly in front of us. So Yeshu Koch, thank you very much, and Chag Sameach.
Yeshiva Torah.